This is The Beat, a conversation about the Charleston County Sheriff's Office and our community. I'm your host, Oshi Alford. Hello and welcome to The Beat, CCSO's podcast, where we speak with some of our CCSO employees, get a little bit of an idea of what they do in their day-to-day, and try to inform you about what we're all about here at the Sheriff's Office. Joining me here today is the Traffic Division Sergeant,
Charles Sebban.
Charles Sebban is my sergeant because I also work in the Traffic Division. Sergeant.
Yes.
We talk about a lot with the Traffic Division, people's preconceived notion of what exclusively we do has to do a lot with like the stoplights. There's a lot of traffic built up. There's some minor collisions or there's speeding, which we do handle, but there is more to it, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot more to it. So yes, we do enforce complaint zones. A lot of people complain about different areas for speeding or any type of issue that's traffic related, and we'll go investigate it. But we also have different tools to help us. So one of the things that we do is we'll set up a radar camera that will basically record for usually a week, and that'll give us a determination if we need to do more enforcement in that area or less enforcement. The biggest thing with traffic enforcement is not really so much to write tickets, but we're trying to reduce the amount of fatalities that we have in South Carolina. The biggest initiative is Target Zero. Although we haven't reached zero traffic deaths in South Carolina, we're trying to reduce it. Unfortunately, as of Tuesday, we in Charleston County, I think, are 5 higher than last year for traffic fatalities. We need the public to do their part, slow down, wear their seatbelts, don't drink and drive.
Let's talk a little bit more about this radar. Is that the StealthStat?
That is the StealthStat.
Okay, so the StealthStat does what some would call data analytics. Over a certain amount of time, it'll track how many people were speeding predominantly, or like
it'll track everybody that goes through. If it's a 25 mile an hour zone, we'll set it up at 15 miles an hour, so to record from 15 miles an hour all the way to the max of 100, and I think it's 120 miles an hour. Master Deputy Schreffler, he's the one that runs the system, and after 6 or 7 days he'll pull all the information and he'll cipher that information into what's pertinent. So that'll tell us if we need to enforce more in that area. When you see a vehicle passing you, a lot of people tend to think that they're speeding because you're in a stationary position, but for the most part people aren't going that fast.
So it's informed enforcement. So it's making sure that our people are where the real large problems are instead of just kind of sending them everywhere blindly.
Correct. We have to be specific like that because we're not the only department that has a manpower issue, but Charleston County also is suffering from a manpower issue, and my unit only has 5 people. We're supposed to be staffed at well above 10, so we have to utilize the 5 people that we do have as effectively as possible.
So you've touched on a little bit about fatal traffic collisions. Our division is the one that handles that, correct?
Yeah. Every fatal collision that happens in Charleston County, specifically in the non-registered area, so City of Charleston also has a fatal team, and North Charleston does as well, but the unincorporated areas, we cover all the fatals. If there is a very serious collision or a fatal collision, we will respond out and investigate the collision as well as do the reconstruction for the collision. I know people get mad when the roads are closed and it takes us a while to get all the information on scene, but on the backside it takes weeks to finish all of that reconstruction. There's a lot of math behind it and a lot of computer software that we use.
Can you go a little bit more in depth about collision reconstruction? Like what data are you gathering and for what purpose?
The thing is, we only have one shot to get all the data. So when we're on scene, sometimes we'll stay there for longer than expected because we want to make sure that we're not leaving anything behind. Because as soon as we leave and the road's cleaned up, we can't get anything else from it. We're going to be looking at markings on the road. A lot of those markings that people just think are like, oh, it was an accident and it's tire marks. Those tire marks are very important to us because they'll tell us what direction the vehicle was going in, what speed they were going based off of the drag marks. There's certain things called gouges in the road, and that will tell us where the maximum impact was, which is actually where the point of the impact was. So we can measure from there to where the vehicles stopped. As soon as we open up the road, people are going to drive on the road, and it's we can't get that information after we have one shot to get all that information. And utilizing all that information, that's when we can put it into a lot of physics equations to determine what the initial speed is. Also, the vehicles have a airbag module. People like to call it the black box of the car, even though it's not a black box. But the vehicle will tell us if people were wearing their seatbelt, how fast they were going, if they were steering to the left or the right, if they had the accelerator. It'll give us a really big picture of what happened 5 seconds before the accident and then after the accident as well. And we basically use that information to corroborate the physics formulas that we utilize to figure out the speed. So as long as the math that we did works with the formulas, then obviously we're doing something correct. In the grand scheme of things, all of that comes back down to, are we going to make charges for the person that contributed to the collision? If we did make charges already, like a felony DUI or a reckless homicide charge, this is all the information that the solicitor is going to need to actually get a conviction on the case. You can make the reckless homicide charge based off of the damage, impact, the speed, but at the end of the day, to prove that the person was driving in a reckless manner which caused a death, you have to be able to prove everything.
So you back it up with the speed, you back it up with the damage from the vehicles.
Yeah,
and
damage profiles, yeah.
the surrounding area. I know you guys take measurements too of the damage. I've seen it before where the hood, they hit on a tree and you measured how deeply inset the hood was.
Yeah, so that's called crush analysis. It's another physics formula, but you will see how much crush is on the vehicle. So if the vehicle bumper was straight and now it's pushed back 24 inches, it takes a certain amount of energy to push the bumper back 24 inches. And based off of the crush analysis, we can come up with how much speed loss occurred.
With the amount of data collection that you do and the sensitive information that you have to work with, I imagine there's a lot of certification programs you have to go through, different courses of study. What did you have to do to get to this point to where you're able to do the research on these collisions? And I know you're also, DRE certified?
Yeah, basically I had to do things that I never wanted to do in college, specifically physics and microbiology and all that other stuff. People say that you're never going to use it, but realistically, when it comes to traffic reconstruction and traffic in general, it's all about physics. The basic class that you would take is collision reconstruction phase 1, which is 2 weeks at the academy. It just goes over the basics, drag factors, coefficients of friction, small measurements. It kind of gives you like an eye-opening ideas of how collisions happen. Phase 2 gets more involved. It explains how inertia works, the different types of collisions, like rear end collisions, different head-on collisions. Then you do the third one, which is phase 3. All of our reconstructionists have to be a minimum of phase 3 to do reconstructions. So phase 3 again is another 80-hour course. It adds in the crush analysis, and then the final 40 hours of phase 3 is going to be basically doing your own actual reconstruction and then going in front of like a mock court and proving why your facts are correct or the way they are. So once you have all 3 of those phases, we'll go to specific courses. So there's 40-hour courses for pedestrian versus auto collisions. So anytime a pedestrian or bicyclist is hit, there are specific equations just for that. Then there's a commercial motor vehicle course, which is another 40-hour course, and that course goes over the different energy losses with commercial motor vehicles. Finally, there's a motorcycle course. Then there is additional classes that you can take at IPTM, which is Florida's essentially police department college, and it's in Jacksonville. But then what we referred to before as DRE is a drug recognition expert. Everybody knows the thing that people do on the side of the road, the SFSTs, or standardized field sobriety testing, that checks to see if a person is believed to be under the influence of alcohol and or drug. Once the person's under arrest, if the person has not consumed alcohol and has consumed a drug, they could also be showing signs and symptoms of inebriation. And that's when they call for a drug recognition expert, which is what I am. We do a more extensive evaluation at the hospital, and we can determine what drug the person's under the influence of. Again, this all comes back to the felony DUI aspect, where the solicitor needs all the information. If there is a breath sample of 0.00 and nothing else, any defense attorney can say that he wasn't under the influence of anything. So unless I come in as an expert and provide an opinion that he was under the influence of a depressant or a narcotic analgesic or something like that, then there's really no evidence for that charge. That's what the DRE is, basically the next level of DUI enforcement. I'm an instructor in all the fields, so I instruct reconstruction, I instruct SFSTs, speed measurement devices. I'm also an instructor for drug recognition experts. In South Carolina, I believe there's only 109 active DREs, and of that, there's only, I think, 13 or 14 instructors in the state. It's a small bunch of us, and we're very devoted to reducing the amount of fatalities. Unfortunately, we're probably on par to break 1,000 fatalities again this year, and at least a third of those are completely preventable DUI-related fatalities.
There's a lot of training that goes into it. There's a lot of education. You do have to provide so much information to back a charge. But also, if you're on the opposite side of it and, your loved one, friend, family member,
Absolutely.
Whomever is involved in a fatal collision, you want to make sure that anything that could have been researched and found has been, so you have the full story. I think that's really important for the closure too, on that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, these are very serious charges. Felony DUI, reckless homicide, we're talking about over 20 years in jail. So we're not going to just bring charges like that willy-nilly. We understand that someone's loved one has passed away from a collision, sometimes preventable collision, and we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that justice comes. And unfortunately, it's not going to bring the person back, but you can only hope that it brings peace to the family.
So what brought you into the field of traffic on this side of things?
I've always loved traffic enforcement, honestly. I've been with the sheriff's office for 7 years now, but I worked as a police officer in New Jersey, and I've always liked traffic enforcement. I didn't have the abilities to go to all these advanced classes when I was in New Jersey, but when I came here, the sheriff's office provided me all those opportunities to attend all these classes and then some. I'm very appreciative of that, but it also put me where I am now. I love doing enforcement. I possibly stop a fatal collision every time I take a DUI driver off the road, and that's the thing a lot of people can't grasp their mind around. It's just a simple DUI, but that simple DUI could become a simple fatal. So it's always been my biggest thing to make the road safer. Anyone is susceptible to being involved in a collision, and even a serious collision on the roads. I always worry when my wife drives her vehicle, mostly because of the other people driving.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I'm in the car with her, I'm scared because she's driving, but realistically, it is all the people on the roadway. Mm-hmm. It's very dangerous, and if we can make it safer for everyone, it's a very big impact.
Yeah, because there's constantly people coming in from out of state as well. There's a huge influx of people. We experience it in the traffic, having to wait and all that whatnot, but we also see it in the amount of collisions, in the amount of
Absolutely.
Speeding issues and infractions. And it's good to know that we do have people who are in our corner trying to keep us safe, whether or not we appreciate it at all times. I think it's good work, important work, and if you didn't do what you did, I wouldn't do what I do. So
yeah, it's a labor of love. So the biggest thing is you need to slow down. You need to stop drinking and driving. You need to wear your seatbelt. One or all three of those factors are probably involved in every single one of our fatal reconstructions. Drinking and driving is such a dangerous thing, and usually the person that's drinking and driving is not the one that gets hurt. It's the other person that was minding their own business. If you guys can do anything just for me, just wear your seatbelt, slow down on the road, and do not drink and drive.
Well, thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure.
I know you had a very busy morning slated ahead of you.
Yeah.
So
It'll get done.
This has been The Beat, where we talk about things that are going on at the Charleston County Sheriff's Office. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been The Beat, a conversation about the Charleston County Sheriff's Office and our community. I'm your host, Oshi Alford. Look for future episodes by following the Charleston County Sheriff's Office on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.